Yeah, it's Fox here with my buddy Costa. He's going to be profiling his, as you could just call it, Overdress deck.
Nirvana Overdress.
Post set 4. So we'll just go ahead and get into it, and yeah.
So for the ride deck, I still like to use the Sunrise Egg. I know some people like to use the Trickstar because then it just thins out the deck for more options. But I do like if you go second, you get an additional card. The Reno, 10k power, then when you ride over it with Rayu, you get the Search for the Trickstar onto the field, and then when you ride on top of Rayu with your Nirvana, which is the only copy of Nirvana that I run in the deck. I feel that with the grade 4, the deck's just a lot more stronger than anything else. And you get a Soul Blast 1 to search for Virina after you ride on top of Rayu. So the whole ride deck is just search power all together. As for the actual start of the deck, running 4 of the new Mahar Nirvana. It has the Soul Blast power setup for your Esperidea, but for just a counter blast and putting a card with Nirvana from either your hand or soul into the drop zone, you deal damage to your opponent, and you also can call Trickstar onto the field, which is the setup that the original Nirvana provided, just with the discard of a card. This one more sets it up for your other grade 4, which are the Virina Esperidea. This one sets up all your strength on the field. It's the additional attack that the Nirvana deck needed, because most of the time you can only attack for 3 times unless you got lucky with Urger, which I'm not a big fan of Urger anymore since it specifically needs the Nirvana in the name. But with Esperidea, if you're lucky and you set up the 2 Trickstars on the field, the one will put all the other units with Overdress in its name from your drop zone and also Trickstar into its original dress. But then you can at least have another one in your hand called Trickstar, and then have 2 that can restand after your Nirvana attacks for 5 attacks in total. It doesn't happen as often, but I like to have that option available, and it's also why I like running the 3 copies, because if I run any more than this, I am at least going to damage check the 1, and I at least want a quicker way to add it into my hand. There are other searchers, but it's a big help there. For the grade 3s, I run 2 of the Expecta. It's more pressure. You do have to overdress it on top of a unit that's already in the overdress state. So the biggest weakness is if your hand kind of dwindles and you only have like Trickstar, you can't overdress it on there. But it gets really strong. It's the additional critical pressure that you can apply to your opponent. So if you do get a critical trigger, you don't have to argue on where you want to give it on the field. For more of the restand power, also 2 of the Virina Valiente. It gets rid of interceptors and then allows the restand. Your opponent doesn't really like to guard rear guard attacks as much, I've noticed, using this card. That's why I like using it, and the additional power from the original dress. For the grade 2s, not really a big grade 2 count, but the best one in the deck is Virina Arcs. It's been in the deck since the beginning when I had it. It's just draw power, draw 2. You're going to invest a lot in overdressing in this deck, so having 4 of this at least gives me my draw 2, and then also just sets me up more and more for other cards like Expecta and Valiente to overdress onto, because the Esperidea does need Trickstar for the overdress. You can't overdress it on top of other cards. So this setup, after you get the +5 and attack with it the following turn, if you don't intercept with it, or just have your opponent wipe it out on the field, you will overdress into your other better cards using it. And then the last other grade 2 that I run is just the 1 Virina. I thought of running 2. If I were to run 2 copies, I would probably drop down the Esperidea numbers to 2 for a second copy of this. But the only risk with this, really, because it is the searcher off of Nirvana when you ride it in the ride deck, is you add this to your hand. If you don't add it to your hand, let's say it's already in your hand or you damage check it, you're at least just saving you an additional Soul Blast that you will end up using for something else in the deck anyway. For the grade 1s, I like the Searcher, Blaze Maiden, Kamena, just because you need those specific overdress cards, especially your Esperidea. It just adds so much to the playstyle once you go into Mahar Nirvana that I like searching out for the specific ones. If not, I can search out Arcs, any of the overdress, just by checking the top cards. It can be risky because you potentially couldn't search anything, then you just wasted the counterblast, but I don't see that happen as often as the actual, chance of it being used. And you can always mix around the numbers. I do run 2 Blaze, Pole Monk, Retsuji. You could always drop down the Kamenos for a 3 of copy and put in a 3rd copy of Retsuji. This is more of where you think most of your recycle is going to happen. I only like the 2 though, because a lot of times with the Esperidea, you will end up putting all your cards with overdress into its original dress, so there won't be any searches for this depending on when you open it. And for the last of the grade 1s, just the 4 twin buckler dragon. Sentinel of choice, just the easy guard access when you go up against your opponents. For the grade 0s, before we get to the triggers, obviously the most important grade 0 in the deck is Trickstar. It can be chosen by your opponent's card effects, but it's the setup for all of your Overdress plays, so you definitely want to run 4 of it. If you were to run it as your starter, and you take out the Sunrise Egg and put in a Trickstar for that count, and you have the additional spot in the deck to use, you can keep your Spare Day count at 3, and then just add in the additional Retsuji that I spoke of beforehand for a 3 of copy there. And then for the trigger lineup, I do like the pressure that the 8 critical can provide. So 4 of the Zone and 4 of the Flail Dragon, just for additional soul power with this one. And just going with the Blaze Maiden lineup for that. And we're also limited to 8 critical in total there. I do run the 3 draws. I was debating on whether going 7 critical and 4 draws, but honestly, with arcs, I think 3 is fine because you do want to save room for the Overtrigger, Drag Veda. Obviously, in D format, you want to have best Overtrigger in the deck to use. Just restanding your Vanguard is all the better. And then lastly, the 4 heals. Just once again, the Blaze Maiden until the day we get
the effect heals.
Yeah.
The only trigger we don't have with an effect.
Yeah, eventually we will, though.
But yeah, that's the profile. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next video.